Honestly, Rebecca, it's embarrassing having you here. Can you at least try to look presentable? This is Vanessa's day. My mother's voice cut through the Sunday brunch noise like a knife through silk. Smooth, practiced, devastating. I sat there with my coffee cup halfway to my lips, frozen in that specific kind of paralysis that comes from being publicly humiliated by someone who's supposed to love you. The cup was warm against my palms. I remember that detail. I remember everything about that moment. Around the table, my family continued their celebration like nothing had happened. My father studied his phone with sudden intense interest. My aunt reached for the butter. My uncle cleared his throat and asked someone to pass the salt. And Vanessa, my 22-year-old sister, the reason we were all gathered at this overpriced brunch spot in downtown Seattle, she smiled behind her phone screen. Not a big smile. Just a small curve of her lips that said she'd heard it too. That said she agreed. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, because that's what I always said. I didn't realize there was a dress code. I was wearing jeans and a sweater. Clean jeans, a nice sweater. The kind of outfit that would be perfectly acceptable anywhere else. But this wasn't anywhere else. This was a family event, which meant different rules applied to me than to everyone else. My mother waved her hand dismissively, her manicured nails catching the light. "It's fine. You're here now. Let's just focus on Vanessa's wonderful news." And just like that, I was dismissed. Erased. Made invisible in the way only family can make you invisible. Not by ignoring you, but by acknowledging you just enough to remind you that you don't quite belong. My name is Rebecca Chen. I'm 28 years old. I live alone in a studio apartment in Portland, Oregon, about 3 hours south of where my family lives. I'm a freelance graphic designer. I've been supporting myself since I was 22, when I left college halfway through my junior year, because my father's business collapsed, and suddenly there wasn't money for my tuition anymore. There was money for Vanessa's private high school, though. There was money for her SAT prep courses, and her college application consultants, and her summer programs at Stanford. But there wasn't money for me. I figured it out. I taught myself design software. I built a portfolio. I found clients. I survived. My family never asked how I did it. They never asked if I needed help. They just watched me disappear from their narrative and replaced me with a simpler story. Rebecca dropped out. Rebecca couldn't handle it. Rebecca isn't like Vanessa. "So tell us again about the acceptance letter," my aunt was saying, leaning toward Vanessa with the kind of warm attention I hadn't received since I was maybe 7 years old. "Stanford? That's incredible, honey." Vanessa launched into the story I'd already heard 3 times that morning. How she'd checked her email at midnight. How she'd screamed and woken up her roommate. How the acceptance package had arrived with confetti inside. She told it well. Vanessa always told stories well. She was beautiful and charismatic and effortlessly perfect in the way some people just are. Long dark hair that fell in natural waves. Clear skin that had never seen a breakout. A smile that made people want to give her things. I used to look at her and wonder what I'd done wrong. Why I got the acne and the weight problems and the social awkwardness. Why she got everything else. Now I just looked at her and felt tired. "Rebecca, you went to college too, didn't you?" my uncle asked suddenly, and I could feel everyone at the table tense. It wasn't a genuine question. It was the kind of question people ask when they want to draw a comparison, when they want to highlight a failure. "Community college," my mother said before I could answer. "For a little while. I went for 2 years," I said evenly. "Then I started working." "Right," my uncle said, nodding slowly. That's good too. Not everyone is cut out for the traditional path." I took a sip of my coffee. It had gone cold. The conversation moved on. They talked about Vanessa's graduation timeline, still 3 months away, but they were already planning the party. They talked about her job prospects. They talked about how proud they were, how she'd always been such a dedicated student, how she'd earned this. I sat there and listened to them rewrite history in real time. Because Vanessa had been a dedicated student, but she'd also had every advantage. Private tutors when her grades slipped. A quiet house to study in. Parents who showed up to every school event and teacher conference. A college fund that never ran dry. I'd had none of that. But somehow, in their version of events, we'd both had the same opportunities. Vanessa had just worked harder, been smarter, wanted it more. After an hour of celebration that didn't include me, I excused myself to the bathroom. No one noticed me leave. The restaurant bathroom was one of those expensive ones, with real hand towels and fancy soap and lighting, that was supposed to be flattering, but just made everything look stark and honest. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself. Really looked. I saw a 28-year-old woman in a nice sweater and clean jeans. I saw someone who'd built a career from nothing. Someone who paid her own rent and her own bills and her own therapy co-pays. Someone who'd survived being erased. But I also saw someone who'd spent the last hour apologizing for existing. Someone who'd said I'm sorry for wearing the wrong clothes to a brunch where no one wanted her anyway. Someone who'd sat quietly while her family celebrated her sister's success by implicitly highlighting her failure. From the dining room I heard laughter. Loud, genuine laughter. The kind of joy I couldn't remember ever inspiring in them. I looked at myself in that mirror and realized I'd been apologizing for existing my entire life. But something in me that day, it stopped apologizing. I drove back to Portland that afternoon in silence. 3 hours on I-5 with nothing but my thoughts, and the gray sky pressing down on the highway. I didn't turn on music. I didn't call anyone. I just drove and let that bathroom mirror moment settle into my bones. My apartment was waiting for me the way it always was. Small, clean, mine. A studio in an old building with hardwood floors that creaked and windows that looked out onto a street lined with cherry trees. It wasn't much, but I'd earned every square foot of it myself. Nobody had co-signed my lease. Nobody had loaned me the deposit. I'd saved for 6 months and moved in on a Tuesday afternoon with everything I owned fitting into my Honda Civic. That was 6 years ago, right after I left school. Right after my father sat me down in his home office and told me there wasn't money for my tuition anymore. "You understand, don't you?" he'd said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Vanessa's school is locked in. We signed a contract. And with the business situation," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I understood. I always understood. Understanding was my specialty. I was 12 when Vanessa was born, old enough to remember what it was like before her. I remembered my parents' attention feeling whole, not divided. I remembered birthday parties, where I was the center of something. I remembered my mother brushing my hair before school, and my father teaching me to ride a bike, and feeling like I mattered. Then Vanessa arrived, and she was perfect from day one. Beautiful even as a baby. The kind of child strangers stopped to admire in the grocery store. She grew into a toddler who never threw tantrums, a kid who never went through an awkward phase, a teenager who made everything look easy. And I grew into the chunky daughter with acne scars and slouched shoulders. The one who tried too hard and somehow still wasn't enough. The one who faded into the background of family photos until eventually they just stopped asking me to be in them. "Rebecca, we're taking a picture." "Oh wait, you're not ready." "Never mind, we'll do it later." Later never came. My 13th birthday party was the last one they threw for me. After that, birthdays became quiet affairs. A card, maybe a cake if I reminded them. Meanwhile, Vanessa's birthdays turned into events. Themes and decorations and guest lists that grew longer every year. I learned to be okay with it, or I learned to pretend I was okay with it, which is almost the same thing. By the time I graduated high school, I'd mastered the art of being invisible. I went to my classes. I came home. I existed in the spaces between their attention to Vanessa. When I got accepted to community college, my parents congratulated me with the same enthusiasm you'd use to acknowledge someone passing their driver's test. Proud, but not surprised. Expected, but not celebrated. Vanessa was still in middle school then, already collecting academic awards and starring in school plays, already becoming the daughter they could brag about. I lasted 2 years at community college before the money ran out. I was doing well. I had a 3.7 GPA. I was studying graphic design because I'd always been good at art, and it seemed like something practical, something I could build a career from. Then my father's consulting business collapsed during the recession. Clients disappeared overnight. The home office that used to buzz with conference calls went silent. I watched him age 5 years and 6 months. "I need you to figure something out," he told me. "Just for a semester. Just until things stabilize." Things never stabilized. Or they did, but only enough to keep Vanessa's private school tuition paid. Only enough to maintain her trajectory toward the Ivy League schools she'd been grooming for since she was 14. I figured it out. I moved to Portland because rent was cheaper than Seattle. I found a job at a print shop, making $12 an hour. I taught myself advanced design software using YouTube tutorials and library computers. I built a portfolio by doing free work for local nonprofits. I networked at coffee shops and community events. I pitched myself to small businesses until someone finally said yes. It took 3 years before I could quit the print shop. Another year before I was making enough to feel secure. By then I was 26, and my family had stopped asking about my plans. They'd accepted the narrative they'd created. Rebecca dropped out. Rebecca couldn't handle college. Rebecca wasn't like Vanessa. They never asked what I did for work. They never asked to see my designs. They never asked if I was happy or struggling or proud of what I'd built from nothing. If you've ever felt invisible to the people who are supposed to see you most clearly, you know how that silence feels. It's not loud or dramatic. It's just absence. A space where love should be but isn't. I built my business anyway. I found clients who valued my work. I designed logos and websites and marketing materials for companies that paid me well and treated me with respect. I made a life that was small, but mine. And my family never knew, because they never asked. I was sitting on my apartment floor that Sunday evening, eating leftover Thai food straight from the container, when my phone buzzed. The notification made me freeze mid-bite. It was the family group chat, the one I'd been muted in for months, because reading their constant updates about Vanessa's achievements felt like drinking poison in small doses. I opened it. 17 new messages, photos of Vanessa's acceptance letter, congratulations from aunts and uncles and cousins, heart emojis and celebration gifs and exclamation points, piled on top of each other like a monument to her success. Then, at the bottom, a new message, from my mother. Family dinner this Sunday. Vanessa has big news. Be there. No excuses this time. I stared at those words. Be there. In all caps. Like I was a child being summoned. Like my presence was mandatory but not desired. Like I was an obligation they were tired of me shirking. No please. No we'd love to see you. Just a command. And that phrase, no excuses this time. As if my absence from family events was about excuses rather than self-preservation. I set my phone down on the floor and looked around my small apartment. At the life I'd built. At the success they'd never witnessed. At the person I'd become in the spaces where their attention never reached. The message was from my mother. Family dinner this Sunday. Vanessa has big news. Be there. No excuses this time. I stared at that message for 20 minutes before I responded. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard while I ran through every possible reply. I could ignore it. I could say I was busy. I could tell the truth that being around them felt like slow suffocation. But I knew what would happen if I didn't go. The follow-up texts would start within hours. Passive-aggressive messages about family obligations and how I always made everything difficult. My mother would call and use that particular tone she reserved for disappointment. My aunt would get involved, texting me privately about how much it would mean to Vanessa if I showed up. They'd paint me as the problem, the difficult daughter, the one who couldn't be happy for her sister. So I typed back, I'll be there. The response was immediate, a thumbs-up emoji from my mother. Nothing else. No thank you or looking forward to seeing you. Just acknowledgement that I'd comply. I spent the next week preparing the way you prepare for battle. I went through my closet 3 times, trying to find something that wouldn't give my mother ammunition. Nothing too casual, she'd comment. Nothing too nice, she'd ask who I was trying to impress. I settled on black pants and a gray sweater. Neutral, forgettable, safe. I practiced responses in my bathroom mirror, kept my face calm when I imagined the inevitable comments, rehearsed how to smile when they talked about Vanessa's accomplishments without letting my smile look forced or bitter. I was 28 years old, and I was still trying to figure out how to exist in my family without getting hurt. Sunday came too quickly. I drove north on I-5, watching the landscape shift from city to suburbs. The closer I got to my childhood home, the heavier my chest felt. By the time I pulled onto their street, I could barely breathe normally. The house looked exactly the same, a 2-story colonial in a neighborhood where every lawn was perfect and every mailbox matched. I sat in my car for a full minute before I could make myself get out. Walking through that front door was like entering a museum dedicated to someone else's life. The entryway walls were covered in framed photos, Vanessa at every age, every milestone, every achievement, Vanessa in her dance recital costume at 6, Vanessa holding her first-place science fair trophy at 10, Vanessa in her high school graduation gown, Vanessa at her Stanford acceptance celebration. I appeared in exactly 3 photos. In 2 of them, I was partially cropped out. In the third, I was 7 years old, standing behind Vanessa at her kindergarten graduation, my hand on her shoulder, my face already learning how to fade into the background. "Rebecca, you're here." My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe. "That's what you're wearing?" 3 minutes. It took 3 minutes. "Yes," I said evenly. "Is that okay?" She made a small sound that wasn't quite agreement. "Well, you're here now, everyone's in the dining room." Everyone meant my father, Vanessa, my Aunt Linda, and my Uncle Tom. A small gathering, but it felt crowded. The dining room table was set with the good china, the kind my mother only used for special occasions. There were flowers in the center, champagne chilling in a bucket. "Rebecca." My father glanced up from his phone, nodded once, and went back to scrolling. That was the extent of his greeting. No hug, no "how have you been," just acknowledgement that I'd arrived. Vanessa sat at the head of the table like a guest of honor. She looked beautiful, the way she always did. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was perfect, her smile was perfect as she greeted me. "Hey, Becca." Nobody else called me Becca. She knew I didn't like it. "Hi, Vanessa," I said, taking the empty seat at the far end of the table, the seat that felt like it was in a different room. My Aunt Linda smiled at me warmly. She was the only one who ever seemed genuinely happy to see me. "How's Portland treating you, honey?" "It's good, work's been busy." "That's wonderful. What kind of work do you do again?" I'd told her at least 5 times. "Graphic design, freelance." "Oh, that's right, that's so creative." The conversation moved on before I could respond. My mother started bringing out food: roasted chicken, potatoes, salad, fresh bread. Everything looked perfect, because my mother didn't do anything that wasn't perfect, at least not when people were watching. We ate, we made small talk. My father asked my uncle about golf. My mother asked my aunt about her garden. Nobody asked me anything. I was there, but I wasn't really present. I was furniture, background noise. Then my mother tapped her champagne glass with a fork. "Okay, everyone. Vanessa has some exciting news to share." Vanessa's smile grew wider. She looked around the table, making eye contact with everyone except me. "So I found out last week that I'm graduating summa cum laude, top of my class." The table erupted. My aunt gasped. My uncle clapped. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father actually put his phone down. "And," Vanessa continued, clearly enjoying the attention, "I accepted a position at McKinsey. I start in July." More celebration. More congratulations. More champagne poured into glasses. I watched it happen like I was watching a movie, like I wasn't part of the scene. "Congratulations, Vanessa," I said when there was a break in the noise. I meant it. Whatever complicated feelings I had about my family, I didn't want bad things for my sister. That's a real accomplishment. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and her smile changed, got sharper somehow. "Thanks, I guess," she said. "Must be weird for you seeing someone actually finish what they start." The words landed like a slap, clean and precise and designed to hurt. The table went quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then my father laughed. My mother smiled. My aunt looked down at her plate, and I understood. I wasn't family. I was the cautionary tale. I made it through dessert by going somewhere else in my head. It's a skill I'd perfected over years of family dinners, being physically present while mentally checked out. I nodded at appropriate times. I smiled when expected. I let the conversation wash over me like background noise. When my mother started clearing plates, I saw my opportunity. I stood up, reaching for my purse on the chair behind me. "I should get going. Long drive back to Portland." "Wait." My mother's hand landed on my arm. Her grip was firm. "I need to talk to you about something. Come to the kitchen." It wasn't a request. I followed her through the dining room, past the wall of Vanessa's achievements, into the kitchen that still smelled like the childhood I'd spent trying to be good enough. She closed the door behind us. The sudden privacy felt ominous. "So," she said, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed, "we're throwing Vanessa a graduation party, obviously." "That's nice. But it's going to be big. Over 200 people. Family, her friends from Stanford, your father's business associates. There's even going to be local media coverage. She won a pretty significant academic award." I waited. There was more coming. There was always more coming. "We've hired event planners, caterers, the whole thing. But we need someone to handle the design work. Invitations, programs, decorative signage, a photo slideshow for the reception, that sort of thing. Understanding landed slowly, then all at once. "You want me to design them?" I said. "Exactly. You do that kind of work, right? It would be perfect, and it would be good practice for you." Good practice. Like I was still learning. Like I hadn't been running a successful freelance business for 6 years. Like my client list didn't include companies they'd actually heard of if they'd ever bothered to ask. "When would you need everything by?" "The party's in 3 months, so we'd need the invitations in about 3 weeks. The rest can come later." She smiled, pleased with herself for thinking of this solution. "It'll be nice for you to contribute something meaningful to Vanessa's celebration." The words hung in the air between us. Contribute something meaningful. As if my presence alone wasn't meaningful. As if I needed to earn my place through labor. "How many design pieces are we talking about?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Oh, I don't know exactly. Maybe 5 or 6 different things. The event planner has a list. I can send it to you. 5 or 6 custom design pieces. 3 weeks for the invitations. A photo slideshow that would require sorting through hundreds of photos, selecting the right ones, editing them, setting them to music, creating transitions. I did this work professionally. I knew exactly how many hours this would take. I also knew what I charged. My rate was $85 an hour. A project this size would run at least $3,000. Probably more. "What's your budget for the design work?" I asked. My mother's expression shifted. Confusion. Then something harder. "Budget? Yes. What are you planning to pay for this?" She laughed. Actually laughed. "Rebecca, this is family. This is for your sister." "I understand that. But it's also my work. My professional work. You can't be serious right now." "I'm completely serious. This is what I do for a living. I have rates." Her face flushed. "Compensation? You want compensation for helping your own sister celebrate her graduation?" The way she said it made it sound absurd. Made me sound greedy and small. "Mom, this is hours of work. Probably 40 or 50 hours when you factor in revisions and the slideshow. I have paying clients. I'd have to turn down other projects to make time for this." "So you're saying no. You're saying you won't help your sister." "I'm saying I need to know if you're hiring me as a designer or asking me as family. Because those are different things." She stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. "Why do you always make everything about money? This is about family. This is about being there for Vanessa on one of the most important days of her life." Where was family when I needed help with tuition? The words came out before I could stop them. Sharp and true and impossible to take back. My mother's face went cold. "That's different and you know it. Your father's business was failing. We did what we had to do. You chose. You chose Vanessa's private school over my community college. You chose her future over mine. You made a financial decision then. I'm making one now. I can't believe you're being this selfish." Selfish. That word again. The one they always used when I tried to set boundaries or ask for anything that resembled fairness. "I need to think about it," I said finally, because I could feel myself starting to shake and I refused to cry in front of her. "Send me the project details and I'll let you know." "Fine." She turned away from me, started loading the dishwasher with sharp, angry movements. "But I hope you know how this makes you look. Your sister is succeeding. She's making something of herself, and you can't even be happy for her. You can't even help her celebrate without demanding payment." I stood there for a moment, watching my mother's back, rigid with disappointment in me. Always disappointment. Never pride. Never "I'm sorry we couldn't help you." Never "I'm impressed by what you've built on your own." Just disappointment that I wasn't more grateful for the scraps. "I'll let you know," I repeated, and walked out of the kitchen. I said quick goodbyes to my aunt and uncle. Vanessa was on her phone, barely looked up when I left. My father was back to scrolling through his email. Nobody tried to stop me. The drive home was dark and quiet. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. My mind kept replaying the conversation. The casual way my mother had asked for thousands of dollars worth of work. The genuine offense when I'd suggested payment. The way she'd twisted it into me being unsupportive instead of them being exploitative. Somewhere around exit 127, something in my chest cracked open, not broke. That had happened years ago. This was different. This was the moment when all the pieces that had been barely holding together finally shifted into a new configuration. I'd spent 28 years trying to earn a place at their table. That night, I realized I'd been begging for a seat they'd never intended to give me. I spent the next 3 days in a fog of guilt and anger that kept switching places like they were taking turns at the wheel. 1 hour, I'd feel terrible for asking about payment. The next hour, I'd feel furious that they'd asked at all. Back and forth. Guilt, anger, guilt, anger. It was exhausting. By Wednesday, I'd convinced myself to just do it, to design the materials for free, and be done with it. Old habits die hard, and my oldest habit was making myself smaller to keep the peace. I opened my laptop and started a new project folder. Vanessa's graduation. I stared at the blank screen and tried to feel something other than hollow. The first step was research. I needed to understand the scope of Vanessa's achievements to create a slideshow that would do them justice. I pulled up Stanford's website, searched for recent academic awards, found the one my mother had mentioned, the Chen Distinguished Scholar Award. Full ride plus stipend. Prestigious, competitive. I clicked through to the award database to see what other scholarships Vanessa had received. Stanford listed everything. It was public record for their top students. I scrolled through the list with a strange detachment. Merit scholarships, departmental awards, a study abroad grant. Then I saw it. Chen Family Education Fund. $50,000 disbursed over 4 years. I stopped scrolling. Read it again. Chen Family Education Fund. Our last name? Our family? I'd never heard of it. My hands were shaking as I opened a new browser tab and searched for the fund name. It took me to a scholarship database that listed private family trusts. There it was, established in 2012 by Margaret Chen, my grandmother, for the educational support of her grandchildren. Her grandchildren. Plural. I clicked through to the fund details. The language was formal, legal, but clear. The fund was established to provide financial assistance to all of Margaret Chen's grandchildren based on demonstrated need and academic progress. It was meant to be split among eligible recipients. The fund administrators had discretion in distribution timing, but were required to notify all potential beneficiaries. The administrators were listed at the bottom of the page. Robert Chen and Linda Chen, my father and mother. I sat there staring at my screen, trying to process what I was reading. My grandmother had set up a college fund for all her grandchildren. In 2012, the year I was in community college, working night shifts at the print shop, eating ramen for dinner because I couldn't afford groceries and textbooks in the same week. I never knew it existed. I pulled up my bank records from 2012, 2013, 2014, nothing. No deposits from any education fund, no letters or emails about scholarship applications, nothing. I went back to the scholarship database and dug deeper. Found the public tax filings that all private trusts have to submit. The fund had $50,000 in it when my grandmother died. By 2014, it was empty. Every cent had gone to Vanessa. My portion, the portion that should have been split between us, or at least offered to me, had gone to my sister, the sister who already had everything, the sister who'd never struggled or gone without, or worked 3 jobs while trying to pass intro to graphic design. I opened a new tab and searched for my grandmother's will. Public records in Washington State. It took me 20 minutes to find it, but I did. I read through the legal language until I found the section about the education fund. To be distributed equitably among all grandchildren who pursue higher education, with priority given to those demonstrating financial need. Equitably. Financial need. I'd had more financial need than anyone. I'd been drowning in it. And my parents, the administrators, the people my grandmother had trusted to carry out her wishes, had given everything to Vanessa and never told me the fund existed. I stood up from my desk and walked to my kitchen window. My hands were still shaking. Outside, the cherry trees were starting to bloom, pink petals against gray sky. I watched them move in the wind and tried to breathe normally. This wasn't just about money. It was never just about money. This was about my grandmother, the one person in my family who'd actually seen me, who'd asked about my art projects, and remembered my birthday, and told me I was smart, trying to help me, trying to give me a chance. And my parents taking that chance and handing it to their favorite daughter instead. They'd erased me from my grandmother's legacy, the same way they'd erased me from family photos. I went back to my laptop and kept digging. I found the original fund documents, read through every page. The language was clear. Both grandchildren were supposed to be notified. Both were supposed to have the opportunity to apply. The fund was supposed to be split based on need, and if one grandchild didn't need it, the other would receive more. I'd needed it desperately. I'd qualified for it. I'd never been told. I pulled up my email and searched for anything from 2012 with the words scholarship or education fund, or my grandmother's name. Nothing. I checked my old apartment's mail forwarding records. Nothing. I even called the community college I'd attended and asked if they had any record of scholarship notifications sent to me that year. Nothing. My parents had been the gatekeepers. They'd had complete control over who knew about the fund and who received it, and they'd chosen to keep it secret from me while giving everything to Vanessa. So I thought about all those nights working at the print shop, coming home at midnight smelling like ink and exhaustion, falling asleep over my laptop while trying to finish design assignments, eating peanut butter straight from the jar because I didn't have energy to make actual food, crying in my car because I didn't know how I was going to make rent and pay for textbooks in the same month. My grandmother had tried to prevent exactly that. She'd set aside money specifically to help me, and my parents had stolen it. Not legally, they were the administrators. They had discretion. But morally, they'd stolen my grandmother's love and redirected it to the daughter they actually wanted to help. I pulled up a calculator and did the math. If the fund had been split evenly, I would have received $25,000. If it had been distributed based on need like my grandmother intended, I probably would have received more, maybe $35,000, $40,000. That money would have changed everything. I could have finished my degree. I could have graduated without debt. I could have had the same foundation Vanessa had. Instead, I'd built everything from nothing, while Vanessa built her success on a foundation that was partially mine. I sat there in my apartment as the afternoon light faded, staring at bank statements and legal documents spread across my desk. Something inside me was changing, crystallizing. The hurt was still there. It would probably always be there, but underneath it, something harder was forming. Clarity. My grandmother had tried to save me. My parents had stolen that salvation and given it to their favorite. I wasn't forgotten. I was erased on purpose. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my desk until sunrise, reading through fund documents and legal statutes, making notes in a notebook I'd probably never look at again. But writing it down made it real, made it solid, made it something I could hold on to when the guilt tried to creep back in. By morning, I'd made my decision. I was going to create the graduation materials. I was going to attend the party. I was going to play the role they'd assigned me one final time. The invisible daughter. The helpful one. The one who contributed without complaining. But I was going to do it on my terms. I opened my email and typed a response to my mother. I'll do the design work. Send me the project details and any photos you want included. Short, professional, no emotion. Her reply came within 10 minutes. Thank you, Rebecca. I knew you'd come through. I'm sending the guest list and event timeline now. This means a lot to Vanessa. Not this means a lot to us. Not we appreciate you. Just this means a lot to Vanessa. The guest list arrived as an attachment. I opened it with my coffee getting cold beside me. 217 names. I read through every single one. My grandmother's siblings, Aunt Patricia, Uncle James, Aunt Caroline. They would have known about the education fund. My grandmother would have told them. They would have assumed both her granddaughters were taken care of. My father's business partners. The ones who'd heard years of stories about his daughters. The successful one at Stanford. The troubled one who couldn't finish school. Family friends who'd watched me disappear from photos and events, who'd witnessed my erasure in real time and said nothing. Vanessa's friends from college. People who didn't know me at all. People who only knew the version of me that existed in family stories. The cautionary tale. I saved the list to my desktop and stared at it for a long moment. Then I opened a new document and started planning. First, I needed legal clarity. I found a family law attorney in Portland who offered free consultations. Made an appointment for that afternoon. Told myself I just needed to understand my options. That I wasn't necessarily going to do anything with the information. The attorney's office was in a converted house downtown. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes and a direct manner that I appreciated. Tell me what happened, she said. And I did. I laid out the whole story. The education fund. My grandmother's will. My parents' role as administrators. The fact that I'd never been notified. She took notes while I talked. When I finished, she looked up at me and said, "You have a case. The fund terms were clearly violated. You should have been notified. You had demonstrable financial need. Based on what you've told me, you'd have a strong claim to at least $25,000, possibly more with interest. What's the statute of limitations? 6 years from when you discovered the violation. You just found out, so you have time. I nodded slowly. What if I don't want to sue? What if I just want them to know that I know? She studied me for a moment. Then you don't need a lawyer. You just need courage. I almost laughed. Courage. I'd survived 28 years in a family that didn't want me. I'd built a career from nothing. I'd learned to exist in spaces where I wasn't welcome. I had courage. What I needed was strategy. I thanked her and left. Walked back to my apartment through streets busy with afternoon traffic. My mind was already moving to the next step. I opened my design software and started working. The invitations came first. Elegant, sophisticated, exactly what my mother would want. Cream cardstock with gold foil lettering. Vanessa's name in a beautiful script font. All the details about the party. Date, time, location, dress code. Perfect and professional, flawless. Then I moved on to the programs. The decorative signage. The table cards. Everything they'd asked for, executed with the skill I'd spent years developing. The skill they'd never acknowledged. And then I created something they hadn't requested. A slideshow. Not just any slideshow. A family tribute. A journey through the years. A celebration of the Chen family, and how we'd arrived at this moment of Vanessa's triumph. I opened a new email to my mother. I'd like to include a family tribute section in the slideshow. Something that shows Vanessa's journey and context of our family's love and support. Can you send me old family photos? The more the better. I want to make this really special. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Her response came an hour later. What a wonderful idea. I'm so glad you're putting real effort into this. I'll send everything I have. Real effort, like I'd been half-assing my life up until now. The photos started arriving that evening. Hundreds of them. My mother had organized them into folders by year, by event, by child. She'd sent me everything, every birthday party, every holiday, every milestone, every family vacation. Every photo where I'd been cropped out or pushed to the edges or conveniently absent. Every photo that told the real story of our family, the one they'd been telling themselves wasn't true. I downloaded them all, organized them carefully. Started building the slideshow with the same precision I used for my paying clients. Maybe more. This was the most important project I'd ever worked on. I included everything. The early photos where both Vanessa and I appeared, smiling and equal. Then the gradual shift, my presence fading, Vanessa's growing brighter, side-by-side comparisons of our birthday parties, our graduations, our achievements. The scholarship fund documentation. I'd screenshot everything. The fund terms, the distribution records, my grandmother's will, public records that anyone could access if they knew where to look. I worked through the night again, and the next night, and the next, building something that looked like a celebration, but was actually a revelation. I had everything I needed. Every photo they'd cropped me out of, every achievement they'd ignored, every moment they'd rewritten me out of existence. They'd given me the weapons. They just didn't know it yet. The 3 weeks before Vanessa's graduation became my war room, though no one would have known it to look at me. I went to client meetings. I delivered projects on deadline. I smiled at the barista who made my morning coffee. I looked like someone living a normal life. But at night, I was building something else entirely. My apartment transformed into a workspace of dual realities. On my main monitor, I worked on client projects, logos for startups, website designs for local businesses, the kind of work that paid my bills and proved I'd made something of myself. On my secondary monitor, I worked on Vanessa's graduation materials. 2 versions of everything. Version 1 was exactly what my family expected. Beautiful invitations with elegant typography, programs printed on heavy cardstock, decorative signage that would photograph well, a slideshow celebrating Vanessa's journey from childhood to Stanford graduate, set to inspiring music, full of warmth and pride. Perfect, flawless, celebratory. Version 2 was identical in every way except one. The slideshow, I'd added a section I called Family Journey. It opened the same way, photos of Vanessa and me as children, both of us smiling, both of us loved, equal. There we were at ages 4 and 16, playing in the backyard. There we were at ages 6 and 18, opening Christmas presents. Both of us present. Both of us visible. Then the divergence began. I'd arranged the photos chronologically, side by side. Rebecca's 10th birthday. Small cake. No decorations. 3 people. Vanessa's 10th birthday. Bounce house. Professional photographer. 30 guests. Rebecca's middle school graduation. 1 photo, taken by a friend. Vanessa's middle school graduation. Professional portraits. Family celebration. Restaurant dinner. The pattern was undeniable when you saw it laid out like this. Year by year, my presence in family documentation decreased while Vanessa's increased. Not because I wasn't there. I was there. I'd been at every event, but because they'd stopped including me, stopped photographing me, stopped acknowledging my existence in the permanent record. I included screenshots of family holiday cards going back 15 years. The progression was stark. Early cards showed both daughters. Later cards showed only Vanessa. The most recent 3 years didn't mention me at all. Then came the scholarship documentation. Clean screenshots of public records. The Chen Family Education Fund, established by Margaret Chen in 2012. The terms clearly stated, for all grandchildren, distributed based on need and academic progress. The distribution records showing every cent going to Vanessa. The timeline showing exactly when I would have qualified, when I was working night shifts and eating ramen, and crying in my car because I didn't know how to make the math work. I included a photo of my grandmother. Just her face, smiling, kind. The woman who'd tried to help me and whose help had been redirected. No narration, no accusatory text, just images and facts, arranged in chronological order, telling a story that didn't need explanation. I tested the slideshow on a Friday night, sitting alone in my apartment with all the lights off except my desk lamp. I watched it play on my monitor, the images transitioning smoothly, the timeline unfolding with devastating clarity. It ran 12 minutes. 12 minutes of truth that couldn't be argued with or explained away. 12 minutes that would show 217 people exactly who my family was. My hands were shaking when it ended. Not from fear, from something else. Something that felt like power. I'd also written a speech. Brief, factual, emotionally restrained. I'd typed it out, printed it, read it aloud until I could get through it without my voice breaking. It was 3 paragraphs, 90 seconds, just enough to provide context before the slideshow played. I practiced in front of my bathroom mirror the way actors do, watched my face stay calm, kept my voice steady. No crying, no yelling, no dramatic accusations, just a woman stating facts about her own life. I want to start by thanking everyone for coming to celebrate Vanessa's graduation. It's a significant achievement, and she's worked hard for it. I also want to share something about our family that I only recently discovered. The slideshow you're about to see documents my experience growing up as Vanessa's sister. All the photos and records are authentic. All the information is publicly available. I'm not sharing this to hurt anyone. I'm sharing it because I'm tired of being invisible. 90 seconds. That's all it would take. I rehearsed it 20 times, 30 times, until the words felt like they belonged to me instead of to my hurt. Until I could say them without emotion clouding my voice. Until I sounded like someone who'd made peace with the truth she was about to reveal. The invitations went out 2 weeks before the party. My mother called me the day after they were delivered. "Rebecca, they're beautiful, really beautiful. You did an amazing job." "Thank you. I have to admit, I wasn't sure you'd come through. But these are really professional. You have real talent." I closed my eyes. After 6 years of running a successful business, my mother had finally acknowledged I had talent, because I'd made something for Vanessa. "I'm glad you're happy with them," I said. "The slideshow is ready too?" "It's ready. I can't wait to see it. This is going to be such a special day." "Yes," I said quietly. "It really is." We hung up. I sat there holding my phone, looking at the 2 versions of the slideshow saved on my desktop. One labeled Vanessa Graduation Final, one labeled Vanessa Graduation Truth. They looked identical from the outside. Same file size, same format, same thumbnail image, but inside they were completely different stories. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to be good enough, trying to earn their love, trying to understand what I'd done wrong to deserve being erased. I'd apologized for existing. I'd made myself smaller and quieter and less demanding. I'd accepted their narrative that I was the problem. But I wasn't the problem. I'd never been the problem. They were. And in 2 weeks, 217 people were going to see exactly what they'd done. Not through my accusations or my anger or my pain, through their own documentation, through the photos they'd taken, and the choices they'd made, and the records they'd left behind. I wasn't going to scream or cry or make a scene. I was going to do something far more powerful. I was going to show them exactly who they were. Vanessa's graduation ceremony was held in Stanford's Memorial Auditorium on a Saturday morning in June. The sun was bright. The sky was that specific California blue that looks fake in photographs. Everything was perfect, the way everything in Vanessa's life always was. I sat in the family section with my parents, my aunt and uncle, and various relatives I barely knew. We were in the 5th row, close enough to see Vanessa clearly when her name was called. My mother had her phone ready. My father had his video camera. They were prepared to document this moment from every possible angle. When Vanessa walked across that stage in her cap and gown, the family section erupted in applause. My mother cried. My father whistled. I sat there with my hands folded in my lap and felt nothing. Not jealousy, not anger, not even the hollow ache I'd carried for so many years. Just observation, just clarity. I watched my parents' faces as they watched their daughter accept her diploma. The pride was real. The joy was genuine. They loved her completely, the way parents are supposed to love their children. And I understood something in that moment that I'd been circling around for weeks. They weren't monsters. They were just people who'd chosen a favorite and convinced themselves it was natural. They'd told themselves a story about their 2 daughters, one successful, one troubled, and they'd believed it so completely that they'd rewritten history to match. They'd cropped me out of photos not because they hated me, but because I didn't fit the narrative they wanted to tell. That made it worse somehow. The banality of their cruelty, the casual way they'd erased me without even noticing they were doing it. The ceremony lasted 2 hours. Speeches about excellence and achievement and the future. I sat through all of it with a calm that surprised me. I'd thought I might feel nervous about what was coming tonight, but I didn't. I felt steady, clear, ready. After the ceremony, we gathered outside for photos. The photographer my parents had hired was professional and efficient. He arranged us in various configurations, the whole family, the parents with Vanessa, the siblings together. That's when my mother stepped in. "Actually, can we get one with just Vanessa and us?" she said to the photographer, her hand on my shoulder, gently moving me aside. "Rebecca, honey, would you mind stepping out for this one?" The photographer looked uncomfortable. "I can take both." "No, it's fine," I said. "I'll take some photos with my phone. You all look beautiful together." My mother smiled, relieved. "Thank you, sweetie. We'll do a big family one after." We never did the big family one. There was always one more configuration they wanted, one more angle, one more shot of just the 3 of them, the real family, the one that made sense in their story. I took photos with my phone. I smiled when people looked at me. I played my role perfectly. "You must be so proud of your sister," someone said to me. An aunt I barely knew. "I am," I said, and it was true. I was proud of Vanessa. I just wasn't proud of how she'd gotten here. The party was scheduled for 7 p.m. at a venue in Palo Alto. Upscale, elegant, expensive. My parents had rented the entire space, a modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick, and the kind of aesthetic that screamed success. I arrived at 5 to set up. The event coordinator showed me where the AV equipment was. I tested the projector, adjusted the screen, made sure the sound system worked. I loaded the slideshow onto the venue's computer and checked it twice. Everything was ready. The decorative materials I'd designed looked perfect. The signage directed guests to the right rooms. The programs were stacked neatly on a table by the entrance. The whole space looked like something from a magazine. My mother arrived at 6, breathless and excited. "Oh, Rebecca, this looks wonderful. You really outdid yourself." "Thank you." "The slideshow is all set?" "All set." "Perfect. Vanessa's going to love this." She squeezed my arm and hurried off to check on the catering. Guests started arriving at 7. I watched them filter in, these 217 people who'd been invited to celebrate my sister's success. I recognized most of them from the list. My grandmother's siblings, my father's business partners, family friends who'd watched me disappear over the years. I stood near the back of the room, blending into the background the way I'd learned to do. my natural habitat, the invisible space where I'd spent most of my life. Vanessa arrived at 7:15, stunning in a blue dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She was immediately surrounded by well-wishers. People hugged her, congratulated her, told her how proud they were. She glowed under the attention, comfortable and confident, and completely in her element. My parents worked the room like politicians, introducing Vanessa to important people, telling stories about her achievements, accepting congratulations on raising such a remarkable daughter. Nobody introduced me. A few people nodded at me politely. One cousin asked if I was helping with the event. I said yes. It was easier than explaining. I was the help. That's what I'd always been. At 7:30, the event coordinator dimmed the lights and signaled to my mother. Time for the tribute portion of the evening. My mother walked to the microphone at the front of the room, her face radiant with pride and champagne. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "We're so grateful to celebrate this incredible milestone with the people we love. Vanessa has worked so hard to get here, and we couldn't be prouder of the woman she's become." The room applauded. Vanessa smiled from her seat at the head table. Before dinner, my mother continued, "We have a special slideshow that Rebecca put together, a journey through Vanessa's life and our family's love. Rebecca, are we ready?" She looked at me across the room and smiled, nodded, gave me the signal. I pressed play. The slideshow began with soft piano music and a photo of Vanessa and me as children, maybe 4 and 16, playing in our backyard. Both of us smiling, both of us there. My voiceover started warm and gentle. "Family is everything. It's where we learn who we are and who we can become. Tonight, we celebrate Vanessa's incredible achievement and the family that made it possible." More photos. Both of us at Christmas. Both of us at the beach. Both of us loved, or so it looked. The guests smiled. My mother relaxed in her seat. My father pulled out his phone to record. Vanessa looked touched, her hand over her heart. Then the music faded. The photos changed. Side by side on the screen. My 10th birthday on the left. Small store-bought cake. Kitchen table, 3 people. Vanessa's 10th birthday on the right. Backyard bounce house. Professional decorations. 30 friends. The room shifted. I felt it. Confused murmurs. Next slide. My high school graduation. 1 photo, blurry, taken by a friend on her phone. Vanessa's high school graduation. Professional photographer. An entire album. Family celebration at an expensive restaurant. My parents stood up from their table. My mother's face had gone white. The slides continued. My college acceptance letter to community college. Celebrated with a card. Vanessa's acceptance to Stanford. Celebrated with a party. Champagne. A new car. "Wait," my father said, his voice cutting across the room. "Turn it off. Rebecca, turn it off." I didn't move. The slideshow played on. Then came the scholarship documentation. Clean, factual screenshots filling the screen. The Chen Family Education Fund. Established 2012 by Margaret Chen. Purpose: educational support for all grandchildren, based on need and academic progress. My voiceover continued, calm and clinical. Our grandmother established this fund for all her grandchildren. I qualified. I never received notification. The administrators had discretion. They chose. The distribution records appeared. Every payment, every semester, every cent going to Vanessa. 0 going to me. Next to me, my Aunt Patricia, my grandmother's sister, gasped audibly. More slides. Photos of me at 19, working the night shift at a print shop, exhausted and alone. Photos of Vanessa's Stanford dorm room, designer bedding, new laptop, everything funded by a scholarship I should have shared. The contrast was visceral, undeniable. My mother was crying now, but not the proud tears from earlier. These were different. Panicked, desperate. This isn't what it looks like," she said to no one, to everyone. But it was exactly what it looked like. The final section began. Family Christmas cards from the past 10 years, displayed chronologically. Year 1, both daughters smiling. Year 2, Rebecca slightly to the side. Year 3, Rebecca in the back. Year 4, Rebecca cropped at the edge. Year 5, Rebecca absent. Year 6 through 10, only Vanessa, as if I'd never existed at all. The last slide appeared. Just text on a black background. White letters, simple font. This is what erasure looks like. This is what happens when love is conditional, and conditional love chooses. The slideshow ended. The screen went black. The room was silent. 200 people had just witnessed my family's truth, and there was nowhere for them to hide. My mother moved first. She rushed toward the AV equipment like she could somehow undo what 200 people had just witnessed. But the slideshow was over. The screen was black. The damage was done. My father's face had gone from white to purple. Rage and humiliation fighting for control. Vanessa stood at the head table, tears streaming down her face, but I couldn't tell if they were from shame or anger or shock. The guests sat in uncomfortable silence. Some whispered to each other. Some stared at me. Some stared at my parents. Then Aunt Patricia stood up. My grandmother's sister. She walked straight to me, her face pale. "Rebecca," she said quietly. "Is that true? About the fund?" "Yes. We didn't know. Your grandmother told us she'd set it up for both of you. We assumed," her voice broke. "We assumed you were both taken care of." Uncle James joined her. "My grandmother's brother. This is public record?" "Yes, all of it." My father exploded. "How dare you? How dare you ruin your sister's night with your jealousy and lies?" His voice carried across the room. Several people flinched. I looked at him calmly. "They're not lies. Everything in that slideshow is documented. Public records, photos you took, choices you made. You twisted everything. I made it look like what it was." My mother appeared at his side, crying. Real tears this time. "Rebecca, please. This is a misunderstanding. We can talk about this privately. We can explain." "Explain what?" I kept my voice steady, quiet. "Explain why I was never told about grandmother's fund? Explain why every cent went to Vanessa when the terms clearly stated it was for both grandchildren based on need. It was complicated. The timing. You didn't misunderstand. You chose. Every single time you chose her over me. And you made me feel like I was crazy for noticing." Vanessa finally found her voice. She stood up, shaking. "You're ruining everything. This is my graduation. Why do you always have to make everything about you?" The irony was so profound that several guests audibly gasped. I looked at my sister, this person I'd spent my life being compared to, and realized she genuinely believed she'd earned everything through merit alone. They'd lied to her too. Just different lies. The party didn't recover. Within 10 minutes, guests started leaving. Small groups gathering their things, making quiet excuses, avoiding eye contact with my parents. Some approached me first. A woman I didn't know, maybe one of my father's colleagues, touched my arm gently. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I had no idea." Others kept their distance, uncomfortable witnesses to a family implosion they hadn't signed up for. My father's business partners looked particularly disturbed. I watched them exchange glances, putting pieces together. Several of them knew he'd been borrowing money. They'd heard years of stories about his successful Stanford daughter, the pride of the family, proof that he'd done everything right. Now they were seeing the cost of that success. The daughter he'd sacrificed to create the perfect one. Aunt Patricia wasn't leaving. She stood in front of my parents, her voice shaking but firm. "I want to know exactly what happened with that fund. Margaret was my sister. She trusted you." "Patricia, please," my mother said. "Not here." "Yes, here, right now. Did you tell Rebecca about the fund?" My father's jaw clenched. It was complicated. The timing wasn't right. The timing wasn't right for 6 years? She was struggling. She needed help. That's exactly what the fund was for. Other family members were gathering now. Uncle James, Aunt Caroline, cousins I barely knew. They'd all assumed the fund had been distributed fairly. They'd all been kept in the dark. "We made the best decision we could," my father said, his voice tight. "Vanessa had better prospects, better opportunities. We invested where it would have the most impact." "You invested in your favorite," Aunt Patricia said quietly, "and you erased the other one." My mother started crying again. She turned to the remaining guests, her hands clasped together. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry Rebecca feels hurt. We never meant. We always loved both our daughters. We made some difficult choices. It was a performance, an apology for my feelings, not for their actions. She was sorry I was hurt, not sorry for hurting me." "I don't accept that," I said clearly. She turned to me, surprised. Rebecca, please. Can we talk about this privately? No. I needed you to acknowledge what you did. And you just did. In front of everyone who matters. My father stepped forward. If you walk out of here, don't expect to come back. Don't expect us to. I don't expect anything from you anymore. That's the point. I picked up my purse and walked toward the exit. My legs felt steady. My hands weren't shaking. I felt calm in a way I hadn't felt in years. Behind me, my mother called out, Rebecca, wait, please, we can fix this. I kept walking. I made it to the parking lot before Vanessa caught up with me. She was crying, angry, her perfect evening shattered. How could you do this? How could you be so selfish? I stopped at my car, turned to face her. Selfish? You've always been selfish. Always jealous. I worked hard for everything I have. I earned it. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and felt something unexpected. Not anger. Pity. You did work hard, I said quietly. But you worked hard with a safety net I was never given. You had tutors when you struggled. You had parents who showed up to every event. You had a college fund that was supposed to be split between us, and nobody, not once, told you that net existed. That's not my fault. No, it's not your fault. But it's also not my burden to carry anymore. She stared at me, tears streaming. So what, you just destroy everything? Ruin my graduation? Turn everyone against our parents? I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending. I got in my car, started the engine. Vanessa stood in the parking lot, watching me with a mix of rage and something else. Confusion, maybe, or the first crack in the story she'd been told about herself. I drove away from that parking lot and didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear my mother screaming my name. I didn't stop. For the first time in my life, I didn't stop. The first text came at 2 a.m. My phone lit up on my nightstand, pulling me from the first real sleep I'd had in weeks. It was from a cousin I barely knew. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Your parents always made it sound like you chose to drop out. By morning, there were 47 messages. Family members, my parents' friends, people who'd been at the party, even a few of Vanessa's college friends who'd looked me up online. Some offered support. Some asked questions. Some just wanted to say they'd witnessed their own family do similar things and they understood. My parents were doing damage control. I heard about it through Aunt Patricia, who called me 3 days after the party. They're telling people you had a breakdown, that you've always been jealous of Vanessa, that you twisted everything to make them look bad. Are people believing it? She was quiet for a moment. Some are, but the documentation is public, Rebecca. And once people started talking, other stories came out. Your uncle mentioned how they never came to your community college graduation. Your cousin remembered them canceling on your 21st birthday because Vanessa had a dance recital. It's a pattern. People are seeing it now. The narrative my parents had built, the successful daughter and the troubled one, was collapsing under the weight of too many witnesses remembering too many small cruelties. Vanessa's social media became a battlefield. Strangers debating privilege and family dynamics under her graduation photos. Her job offer wasn't affected, but her image was. The perfect girl with the perfect life now had an asterisk. She hadn't done anything wrong, but she'd benefited from something deeply unfair. She was collateral damage in a war she didn't start. I felt unexpected sympathy for her. She was 22. She'd believed what she'd been told. That wasn't her fault. 3 weeks after the party, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Rebecca, it's your mother. Please don't hang up. I didn't say anything. Your father and I would like to meet with you. We've hired a family therapist, a mediator. We think if we could all just sit down and talk. Talk about what? About everything. About moving forward. About healing as a family. I agreed to one session. Not because I thought it would fix anything, but because I needed to see if they were capable of real acknowledgement. If they could own what they'd done without qualifiers or excuses. The therapist's office was neutral territory. Beige walls, comfortable chairs, a box of tissues on the side table. My parents arrived early. They looked older than I remembered. Tired. The therapist, Dr. Martinez, calm and professional, explained the process. Everyone would have a chance to speak. The goal was understanding, not winning. My father went first. We want you to understand our perspective. We were in a difficult position, limited resources. We had to make choices. We did what we thought was best. Best for who? I asked quietly. For the family. For everyone's future. My mother leaned forward. We made mistakes. We can admit that. But we did our best with what we had. We never meant to hurt you. Dr. Martinez looked at me. Rebecca, what do you need from them? Acknowledgement. Not of my hurt feelings. Acknowledgement of their specific actions and choices. That they deliberately kept the scholarship fund from me. That they chose to give everything to Vanessa. That they erased me from family documentation systematically over years. I need them to say what they did. Not just that I feel hurt about something. Silence. We didn't erase you, my mother said finally. That's not fair. Vanessa was easier to photograph. She was more comfortable in front of the camera. You're doing it right now, I said, making excuses instead of acknowledging. My father's face hardened. What do you want from us? You want us to say we're terrible parents? That we destroyed your life? We gave you a home. We fed you. We supported you. You gave me the minimum. You gave her everything else. Because she earned it. And there it was. The truth they'd never say out loud but always believed. Vanessa had earned their love. I hadn't. Dr. Martinez tried to redirect, but the session was over. My mother made one last attempt. If you can't forgive us, then you're choosing to destroy this family. I looked at her and realized she still didn't understand. I hadn't destroyed the family. I'd just stopped pretending it existed. My life changed in ways I didn't expect. Someone at the party had recorded parts of the slideshow on their phone. Within a week, clips were circulating online. Not the whole thing, just enough to tell the story. Family favoritism, hidden scholarships, systematic erasure. The comment section became a confessional. Thousands of people sharing their own stories of being the forgotten child. The scapegoat, the one who didn't fit the family narrative. My design business inbox filled with inquiries. People wanted to work with someone who'd stood up for herself, who'd demanded to be seen. I raised my rates, started being selective about projects, built the career I'd always had the talent for, but never the confidence to claim. I also started therapy. Real therapy this time. Not a mediator trying to force reconciliation, but someone who helped me understand what had happened to me. Dr. Reeves gave me vocabulary. Scapegoat child, golden child dynamic, covert narcissism, emotional neglect. The labels didn't fix anything, but they validated something fundamental. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't oversensitive. I'd been abused in a socially acceptable way. Your parents didn't hit you, Dr. Reeves said during one session. They didn't scream or lock you in closets, so it's hard for people to see it as abuse. But systematic erasure is violence. Making someone invisible is violence. I cried in her office more than once. Not sad crying. Relief crying. Someone finally understood. I reconnected with extended family members. Aunt Patricia became a regular part of my life. She'd been sidelined too, years ago, for questioning my father's business decisions. We had coffee every other week and talked about my grandmother. She knew something was wrong, Aunt Patricia told me. Near the end, she asked me to check on you. She said she had a bad feeling about the fund, but she died before she could do anything about it. That knowledge hurt, but it also brought peace. My grandmother had tried to save me. She'd seen me when no one else had. 6 months passed. My life settled into a new rhythm. Work I enjoyed. Therapy that helped. Relationships with family members who actually wanted to know me. Then Vanessa's email arrived. Subject line, I need to talk to you. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Rebecca, I've been in therapy. My therapist thinks I should reach out to you. I'm starting to see things differently, about our childhood, about how Mom and Dad treated you. I don't know if I'm ready to say they were wrong, but I'm starting to wonder if maybe things weren't as fair as I thought they were. Can we talk? I have questions. Not an apology. Not acknowledgement. Just questions. She wanted me to help her understand what our parents had done. She wanted me to educate her about my own erasure. I didn't respond immediately. I let the email sit in my inbox while I figured out how I felt about it. 3 days passed. I read it 17 times. Each time I felt less anger and more exhaustion. She wanted me to help her understand what our parents had done. But I'd spent my life explaining. I was tired. I responded to Vanessa's email on day 4. Short, clear, boundaried. I'm willing to meet for coffee, but I'm not here to educate you or convince you of anything. You need to do your own work. If you want to understand what happened, talk to your therapist, talk to Aunt Patricia. Don't make me responsible for your awakening. She agreed. We met 6 months after her graduation at a coffee shop in Seattle. Neutral territory, public enough to feel safe. She looked different, thinner, tired. The glow of success had dimmed. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "You said you had questions. I've been thinking about everything, about the scholarship, about how Mom and Dad treated you." She paused. "My therapist says I benefited from a system I didn't create but also didn't question. That's true. I worked hard, Rebecca. I did. But I'm starting to see that I worked hard with its advantages. Things I didn't even know were advantages because I thought everyone had them." I nodded, waited. "I'm angry at them," she said quietly. "For lying to me. For making me think I was self-made when I was actually subsidized by money that should have been yours too. Are you angry at me? For exposing it?" She looked up, met my eyes. "Yes. You ruined my graduation. You humiliated our parents in front of everyone. Part of me will probably always be angry about that. I understand. But I'm also starting to understand why you did it. You tried to be invisible for so long, and they kept erasing you anyway." We sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop hummed around us. Other people's normal conversations. "I don't know if we can be sisters," Vanessa said finally. "Real sisters, but maybe we can be something. People who understand each other's damage." "Maybe," I agreed. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't closeness. But it was honest. And that was more than we'd ever had before. My parents never reached out again. I heard through Aunt Patricia that they were telling people I'd cut them off, that I was unstable, that they'd tried everything to maintain a relationship but I'd refused. The narrative had inverted. They were now the victims of my cruelty. I didn't correct the story. The people who mattered knew the truth. The people who believed their version weren't people I needed in my life anyway. I focused on building something they'd never given me, a life defined by my own choices, rather than their rejection. I used to think family was everything. Now I know family is only everything when it's something. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let go of people who never held you in the first place. 1 year after Vanessa's graduation, I turned 29 in an apartment I'd designed myself. Larger windows, better light, space that felt like mine in every way that mattered. My business was thriving. I had clients who valued my work and paid me what I was worth. I had friends who showed up when I needed them. I had a life I'd built from scratch, without permission or approval from anyone who'd tried to make me invisible. I still carried scars. I probably always would. I was hypervigilant about being excluded from things. I overcompensated in relationships, always giving more than necessary to prove I deserved to stay. I struggled with self-worth on bad days, but I was aware of these patterns now, and awareness was power. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Official letterhead. Estate settlement documentation. Inside was a check for $28,000 with accumulated interest, my portion of my grandmother's education fund, finally distributed after family pressure and legal review. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about acknowledgement, about being seen, about my grandmother's love finally reaching me the way she'd intended. I deposited the check that afternoon, donated half to a scholarship fund for first-generation college students who'd lost family support, invested the rest in my business, new equipment, professional development, the tools to build something even bigger. I didn't tell my parents. Didn't post about it. Just moved forward. Now I sit at my desk on a Wednesday morning, working on a logo design for a nonprofit that helps women leave abusive situations. Sunlight streams through my window. My coffee is still warm. Everything feels steady. My phone buzzes. A text from Vanessa. "Can we meet for coffee again? I've been thinking about some things." I smile slightly. I'll respond later. Maybe yes, maybe no. But the decision is mine. People ask if I regret what I did, if I regret exposing my family. The truth is, I didn't expose them. I just stopped hiding. And that's not revenge. That's survival. That's self-respect. That's love, finally turned inward where it belonged all along. I am not the daughter they wanted. I am not the sister they needed. But I am, finally, completely, the person I choose to be, and that is enough.